before we continue the text about the encounter of Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, which we started yesterday, I just want to say that if in order to really acquire a kind of literacy in the Zohar, one has to keep reading, and not to try to decipher all the symbols and all the elements right away, but have a couple of readings, even maybe of one section, maybe take 50 pages from the book of the Zohar on Genesis, and read them back and forth several times, in order to be steeped in the language of the text. And then certain things will align themselves. Other things you will have to look at the commentary to see what exactly the symbolism is. But remember that we mentioned 15 or more different synonyms for the character or the nature of the Sefirot. There were lights and kings, faces, sides, words, letters, and the names themselves are interchanging. So instead of trying to figure out everything right away, it's good to read to read as much as possible, and then go back and read more in depth. And also, I think highly recommended when possible is to look up biblical sources in context, because in many cases, and this is, by the way, the same rule applies for Talmud and Midrash, but I think it's more significant here because it's highly homiletical. There's a lot of creativity in the way that the texts are developed. So when you see them in the original context, you could understand whether it is completely taken out of context or it is attached somehow, and if so, how much the context and the association of the original text affect the way it has been incorporated into the midrashic midrashic text, and we'll see that here also. So we're going to continue with the text we started yesterday from. This is from the Zohar in Shemot. 1 second. In the continuation of that phrase, of that article from the Zohar, which is in the first volume of the Zohar, page 244 to 245, it says this: "Velet takifu keyoma de parish ruha min gufa." Nothing is as fierce as the day in which the spirit separates from the body. כך תקיפו דרחמו דכנסת ישראל לגבי קודשה בריחו. This is similar to the ferocity of love of Knesset Israel, the Shekhinah, towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It is like the ferocity of death at the time when the spirit wishes to separate from the body, as we explained yesterday. Now, the next part of this pasuk in Shir HaShirim is this kasha kishol kin'ah. Jealousy is as fierce as Sheol, the netherworld, the world of the dead. Kol man derachim vela kashir imeh kin'ah lav rehimute rehimuta kevan dekane ha rehimuta ishtelim. Anyone who loves but is not jealous, his love is not love. Once he is jealous, his love is complete. Now, that is a very intriguing statement, because first of all, we associate the word jealousy with something negative. When it appears in the Torah, it usually, or in the Tanakh, it usually describes some kind of an aggressive action. When Eliyahu kills the prophets of Baal, and God asks him, "What are you doing here?" He responds, "Kano kineti l'Adonai Tzevaot." I was jealous for God. When Eldad and Medad, the two prophets, prophesy without permission from Moshe, and Yoshua says, "Stop them or punish them," Moshe says, "Are you jealous for me? I'm kaneh atali." So again, it's negative. It says, you should not be fighting my war. When when the Torah speaks of the deviant woman, a woman who has an affair against her husband's will, the description of the act of the husband is ve'avar alav ruach kin'ah ve'kineh et ishto. He will act with jealousy and he will be jealous for his wife, meaning that he will blame her, he will accuse her of having promiscuous relationships or forbidden relationships. So that is the negative association. This is the negative association that we have with the word lekaneh. On the other hand, we find that term regarding God. God is called El Kana, a jealous God, which is in itself perplexing. That why would God be jealous? Because jealousy is something that we associate with human being. True, it's all other attributes that we find in the Torah are also human, whether love or mercy or patience. So we could say that regarding all other character traits. But I think that it is especially disturbing when we speak about the jealousy, because we associate jealousy with the sense of wounded honor, that one's honor is taken away from him, and you assume that the one who is great above all should not feel that kind of jealousy. And as a matter of fact, there is a grain of that idea already in Midrashic literature, and that is in a discussion of the destruction of the Hurban, of the first destruction. The rabbis say that our mother Rachel, came and spoke with God and said, "Why are you jealous of idolatry? Let us assume that your children, the Jews, worshipped idols, and let's assume that this is like marrying another wife. Why would you, God, act with jealousy? You know that those other gods have no, they're not real. There's no essence to them." So that is a strong accusation coming from the author of Midrash, a rabbi who put it in the mouth of Rachel. This is in the introduction to Echa Rabbah, introduction 21 or 22. The Midrash says that. So already the rabbis of the Mishnah and the Midrash struggled with the concept of jealousy when it has to do with idolatry. Meaning that we don't understand why God would be jealous. And there were attempts to explain it philosophically, meaning that it has nothing to do, it's not that God's greatness or God's glory are harmed, but rather the jealousy is for the people, since the whole idea of the Torah is to educate the world and bring it to a better place. So if people deviate from the path and worship idols, they harm themselves and not the divinity. But here the Zohar introduces a very, like I said, intriguing concept. He says this: if your love is not bound, the actual translation to be, if one's love is not bound with jealousy. The word kashir, likshor, to bind, is a key word in the Zohar. We constantly speak about bonds and connections and interactions. So the accurate translation would be anyone whose love is not bound with jealousy, his love is not love. Why is that? Once he is jealous, his love is complete. It's as if saying that when you're not jealous, that means that there's room in your heart for the love of another. When you're jealous, it means that you're solely focused on that love. So it could be a hard, I would say, hard statement to digest. I think, but only if we understand it in the sense of ownership that leads also to even some kind of physical damage or emotional damage. Then we understand the word jealousy as one which is a display of ownership, and usually it's from a man towards a woman because the man feels that he owns the woman and she should not go with someone else. But if we understand the kin'ah as the idea of protection of privacy, of saying this is, and which we use actually in modern English, right? We say that someone protects his privacy jealously, right, in a certain way. So, or we protect our rights jealously, meaning that we have the zeal, that the passion for that particular thing. So that could be a good thing as long as it is reciprocal and respectful, and not done in a way that connotes ownership. It is interesting also to just last thing that in Hebrew the word kinyan, which is to purchase and possess, and the word kin'ah are related. They both start with kuf nun, and so they are associated verbs. So in any case, the Zohar says that one's love has to be bound with jealousy. Mikan olifna. From here we've learned that one must be jealous for his wife. Deba'i barnash lekana'a leintete begin diitkashar imah rehimuta shelim deha migokach la yahiv ainoi beintu ahara. First of all, so let's translate. From here we've learned that one must be jealous for his wife in order for him to be bound with her or to attach himself with her with complete love, because that will lead him not to look at another woman. So here's a twist of the rabbis, of the author of the Zohar on the biblical verse. The biblical verse reads, "Ve'avar alav ruach kina'ah ve'kinet ishto." If a man suspects that his wife is having an affair with another man, right, he is entitled to be jealous for her, meaning to demand that she will cease, or to bring her to the Kohen for an investigation. And when you read it in the biblical context, I think there's no doubt that we feel that there's a certain bias towards women. I mean, only women are those who can be accused and told that they are not faithful to their husbands, but we don't find a similar thing from the woman towards the husband, where she can bring him to Bet Din or to the temple and say, "See, my husband is having an affair with another woman." So it is sort of one-sided, and it's definitely disturbing. Now, keep that in mind, and we'll have to refer to a discussion in the Talmud. That's a discussion between the two schools of thought, really, in Talmudic literature. I mean, starting from the Mishnah, and they are Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Ishmael founded two opposing schools, and some of their main disputes were on how to interpret the verses of the Torah when it came to superfluous words and repetitive texts. So Rabbi Ishmael was of the opinion that Dibra Torah kilshon bnei Adam. The Torah uses the vernacular and the manner of speech that humans use. The Torah is not a dry legal codex. It could have been trimmed to convey only the core message of the halakha, but if that would have been done, you wouldn't find any pleasure in reading the Torah. So in order to make the Torah accessible, it was written in the language of humans and not in the language of codifiers. Let's put it this way. Because of that, Rabbi Ishmael says, if the Torah repeats a word, there's nothing to learn from that word, because that is the manner of speech of people at the time. As for example, when you say שמוע תשמעו, צעוק יצעק, ענה תענה, עזוב תעזוב עמו. All these repetitive words do not mean that you have to repeat an action or that there is another action that has to be performed. Rather, this is the way people speak. I'll give an example. When you say, I'm not going to go nowhere, which we know is not right, is inaccurate, we could have said, I'm going nowhere, but no one would claim that I'm going to learn a special halakha from the added word, I am not going to go nowhere, right? We understand that's a manner of speech. Of course, the Torah does not use such atrocities, but Rabbi Akiva says, no, the text is divine, and every word that it repeats, I will learn something from it. In that sense, we are following for some reason we follow the approach of Rabbi Akiva. Nowhere in the Talmud was it decided that one approach is superior to the other, but I believe that we connect better to the system of Rabbi Akiva because in that system everything has a meaning and everything has a place. This is the way the human brain works in general. We like to see order and we like to see functionality, that things fulfill a certain function. So I hear the argument of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel is whether beauty or aesthetics is a function. So for the aesthetics of the language, you keep it that way. But okay, that dispute is sort of have been resolved. But there was one of the areas where they had a dispute was when the Torah does not say a certain, does not mention a certain action as a commandment. So do you read it as a commandment or not? So in that case of the deviant woman, a woman who's suspected of having an affair with another man, the Torah says, "Ve'avar alav ruach kin'ah ve'kineh et ishto." If a man is jealous to his wife, he is possessed by a spirit of jealousy, and he is jealous to his wife. So here, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel split. Rabbi Shmuel says, "Ve'kineh et ishto reshut," and Rabbi Akiva says, "Ve'kineh et ishto chova." Let's look for a second in the original text. One second. This is in Devarim, in Devarim chapter 5. This is in Parashat Naso. So here, let's see what the Torah says here. Okay, a little later, Perek Zayin. Okay. Sorry, my mistake. It's chapter 5 of Bamidbar, not of Devarim. So here in chapter 5, verse 13, verse 14, and the spirit of jealousy came upon him, and he is jealous of his wife, and she was defiled. Or if the spirit of jealousy came upon him, and he is jealous of his wife, and she was not defiled. So there could be a situation where nothing happened, yet the man, the Torah says, "Avar alav ruach kin'ah ve'kineh et ishto," and he's going to be jealous of his wife. So in that scenario, Rabbi Shmuel says, "Ve'kineh et ishto reshut." This is optional. The Torah says, if you feel concerned, and if you want to do something about that, then you're allowed to proceed with that protocol of bringing your wife to the Kohen. But Rabbi Akiva says, no, it's not an option. It's mandatory. You must be jealous. You must act with jealousy. You must be, as it's in Hebrew, mekaneh. So, let's go back to the text in the Zohar. So here, the Zohar, the author of the Zohar, comes to the Talmudic conclusion in a completely different way. And that is one part of the things that the Zohar does. Remember that we spoke about that, is reaffirmation of Talmudic or halachic issues, sometimes with a halachic outcome, and sometimes without, because this issue is already out of halacha. This was not relevant, not practical for about 1500 years. This was not practiced by the time the Zohar was published. But the Zohar says, we have concluded, or we have learned from here, that one must be jealous for his wife. So he took the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who said that it is mandatory. How did you learn it from there? Because and you start with the verse in Shir HaShirim that says, love without jealousy is not love, because it's not focused and it's not unique. And because of that, one must be jealous to his wife. Why? Not in order to bring her to the Kohen, embarrass and punish her, but rather begin the itkashar ima rehimuta shelim, in order for him to be bound with her in complete love. Because once he acts towards her with jealousy, he will not look at other women. You see how the Zohar took the original text and turned it around to mean almost the exact opposite. The idea of being jealous and bringing one's wife to the Kohen eventually serves the woman. It benefits the woman because she is now guaranteed that her husband will look at her only and not at other women. I'm not saying that this is the meaning of the text. I think it's very hard to argue that that's the meaning of the text, of the biblical text, but this is what the author of the Zohar did. So that is the kind of wizardry in the interpretation of biblical verses that is intriguing in the Zohar. But we could definitely see that here and some other places that at least some of the authors of the Zohar had greater sensitivity to the idea of love, and maybe you could say that they were somewhat romantic, at least some of them. Another comment on that text is, here is another example of the problematic language of the Zohar. Olifna is supposed to be understood as learned, but the word in Aramaic is yalifna and not olifna. So, and that is very common of the conjugation of the verb in Aramaic is not the accurate conjugation according to the alleged date and origin of the text. So the Zohar goes on to say, Ma'u kasha kish'ol, what is the meaning of as fierce as Sheol? Ela, ma Sheol kashya be'inayu dehayavin lemechat be, כך קנאה קשיה בעיניו דמן דרחים וקנה להתפרשה מרחימותה. So here I think the Zohar goes into a regular midrash where we're not dealing here with elevated or abstract concepts. He says the meaning of as fierce as Sheol, he says just as Sheol is fierce in the eyes of the wicked who go down into it, so jealousy is fierce for the one who loves and the one who's jealous to detach himself from his love. So here the author already goes to the end product of jealousy when one is jealous and one does focus on the spouse, but then realizes that spouse is not trustworthy and not faithful, then separation will ensue, and that will be as difficult as death. Davar aher, and we'll see that the Zohar will go back to more mystical interpretation. Davar aher, kasha kish'ol kin'ah, another thing, that is, so far now, we got into the realm of classic midrash. Jealousy is as fierce as Sheol. When the wicked are being brought down to it, b'sha'ata denahtin lon lehayav hayabe, hayav literally in Hebrew means to owe, but here it is in the sense of a sinner who is found guilty. Modi'in lon hovaihu alman hatin le v'kashya lehu. They are being told, they are being informed what is their sin and why are they going down to the pit, and it's very difficult for them. How is that derived from the text? Kasha kish'ol. It's hard for me to say, unless it's not written. It's not written in the text here, but could be that there was some kind of etymological interpretation of the author of the Zohar that the word sheol is related to the verb sha'al, which is to ask. So maybe they understood that that when one goes to Sheol, he asks, why am I being brought here? And is being informed, and that is something which is difficult for him to digest. So now what is the analogy? The analogy is not so clear. It says, Kach man dekanei hu tavar al chove v'hashiv kama ovadin uchden kishura dirhimuta itkashar be. He says, the one who is jealous demands for his sins, but not necessarily his sins. Could be, just like I said before, that sin is a debt. The sin is a debt for a person that he has to pay for. So the one who's jealous starts scrutinizing the relationship that he has with his beloved or with her beloved, and then he might realize that when you count all the acts, that love is not complete. But that could have been the interpretation had the Zohar not concluded with the word uchden kishura dirhimuta itkashar be, because that is a positive thing, and then the bond of love is bound in him. So my interpretation here, but I don't want to change the text of the Zohar. But if you look at the printed edition, you'll see that it is done all the time. There are different versions, hard to read. I would add 2 letters here to read the word vehechden kishura dirhimuta itkashar be, and that will become a question. And instead of reading, then the bond of love is bound in him, it will be a question, and how the bond of love is bound in him. That to me would make more sense. That what the author of the Zohar says, that some things maybe are better left unturned and unresearched. If you want to research with jealousy and to know exactly how the other person feels about you, you might find things that you don't want to know. Just as those who go to Sheol and ask, why am I here? And when they know, they feel more embarrassed. And in other words, it says, just accept it and move on. But then again, this is not necessarily a mystical part that we have. But then the author goes to the end of the verse in Shir HaShirim. Reshafea rishpei esh shalhevet. Its sparks are sparks of fire, the flame of Yah. Yah is God. It's the suffix that we have in Hallelujah and other places, but also the first 2 letters of the ineffable name. So the author asks, what is the flame of Yah? It is the flame which is ignited and comes out of the shofar. The shofar is a symbol for the Sphira of Bina, probably because the Bina is also in the symbolic system, is a river, and a river is the source of flow of abundance. It's not improbable that there is an influence of outside literature, even which is the what we call the horn of abundance, or the cornucopia. The cornucopia is something that is borrowed from Greek mythology, and that was like a horn or a shofar that would flow with abundance to the from the world of the gods to the world of humans. Could be that there was an influence. It doesn't mean that there is a Greek element or a pagan element here, but rather that at a certain point, one of the authors who was familiar with the Greek system of symbols or Greek mythology incorporated into his mindset, especially since we're dealing with a literature that is based on, in great part, of visions and ideas that are written in a state of meditation. But in any case, he describes the fire that flows from the shofar. De'ihu it'ar ve'okid. This shofar is aroused and is ablaze. It's burning. And remember, we'll see this word a lot, the word it'ar, and it's a hard word to translate because it could mean it'ar from the word hit'orerut, to awaken or to be aroused, or it could mean le'arot, to pour. And definitely with that image of the shofar, we have both. That's something that awakens, that starts a fire or a sound or a flow, but also something that pours down. Uman ihu semala. Hadau dichtiv semolo tachat leroshi da okid shalhova dirhimu dikneset Israel לגבי קודשי בריחו. Maybe we should go back and review for a second the text from Shir HaShirim, just to see the full text in context. This is in Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, chapter 8. She says that here the woman is talking to her beloved. She says, I will bring you to the house of my mother, you will teach me, I will make you drink ashkecha miyayin harekach me'asis rimoni, I would cause you to drink of the spiced wine of the juice of my pomegranate. Yain harekach, incidentally, is also the title of the book, the commentary that my great-grandfather wrote on the Iderot, those part of the Zohar. He called it Yain HaRekach, spiced wine. Semolo tachat roshi vimino tehabekeni. That's a very intimate image. The woman speaks about her beloved, and they're lying side by side, or they sitting side by side. His left hand supports her head, and his right hand embraces her. But in the same breath, she says, do not arouse love until the time has come. So even when you see that, you have to let the intimacy grow. And following that, in verse 6, she says, set me as a seal on your heart, as a seal on your right hand. Zohar, even though it says arm, Zohar is always the right hand, because that's the right hand. Zohar connotes strength, and the right hand is the strong hand. Because love is as fierce as death. Jealousy is as fierce as Sheol. Its sparks are sparks of fire, the flame of Yah. And then מים רבים לא יוכלו לכבות את האהבה ונרות לא ישטפוה. Mighty water are not able to put out love, so love is here definitely fire, and rivers cannot wash it away. In the original context of Shir HaShirim, it seems like she's speaking with people who want to block her, to stop her from loving the one that she loves. But we'll go back to the text of the Zohar and see what happens here. So the Knesset Israel, the Shekhinah, speaks about its connection to the upper Sefirot. And what is it? Man iu semala. Hadau dichtiv semolo tachat leroshi. Who is she? Who is that flame of God? It's the left arm, Gevurah. This is what is written. his left arm is under my head. It is the one which ignites the flame of the love of Knesset Israel towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So here we see a description of the dynamics, the inner dynamics within the structure of Sefirot, where we already spoke about the Yesod that connects the Malchut and the Tiferet, but here the Gevurah is also a part of the process. Go 1 second up to the drawing. I know that we went so far. So here we spoke before of the Tiferet and the Malchut, right? This is Malchut is the Shekhinah, Tiferet is representative of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of God, as it's the center of the lower six Sefirot, and in that sense, it's the king, it's God. And here, the left side is described as a shofar flowing from Binah, which is a river, and bringing flow down to Malchut to go back to Tiferet, some kind of a interaction that we don't know that it's based on texts. Remember that we mentioned that there are many different ideas and systems of interaction, so it's hard to talk here about to say, okay, how does it work mathematically? How does it work mechanically? We don't know that exactly, because there are many different systems described in different parts of the Zohar, but this is what is described here. So ובגיני כך, מים רבים לא יוכלו לכבות את האהבה. It says, because of that, mighty waters would not be able to put out the fire of love. דהה כדעתי ימינה, דאי הוא מים, הוסיף יקידו דרחימותה, ולקווה שלהובה דשמאלה. Because when the right hand, which is water, comes, it adds the flame of love, and it does not put out the flame of the left arm. So here's how the imagery of the text in Shir Hashirim is superimposed upon the imagery of the Sefirot. We have Hesed on the right and Gevurah on the left. Gevurah is fire, rigor, justice, judgment is fire, and Hesed is water. Now, but both of them contribute to the nurturing and flaming of the fire of love. So that is how they read Mayim Rabim Lo Yachlu Lechabot Ahava. Mighty waters would not in a way. Again, this is taking it out of the original context. In the original context, the Mayim Rabim, the mighty waters, are the enemy of love. This is this fire that's burning, and water maybe here understood as something which is cold and not as representative of emotion as fire is, and the water tries to put out the fire. Here, the author of the Zohar takes it to a positive place where the waters of Hesed, of loving kindness, actually are assisting in the building of that fire. And that comes from the same concept, we could say, of the balanced approach, that in order to sustain any relationship or any system, you have to be balanced between the extremes, the harsh judgment, the rigorous judgment, the fire, and the love. And that goes back to what he said before about kin'ah and ahava. So kin'ah would be a concept of gevurah, of judgment. Ahava is a concept of hesed, of love. But you need both. You need to love someone, and you need to, according to that theory, I'm saying that is how one should be. According to that theory, you should be protective of your personal or sacred space. So when the right hand hesed, which is water, comes, it adds to the flame of love, does not put out the flame of the left arm, as it is written, in his right arm will embrace me. So now we're going back to this sort of circular imagery that is present both in the physical realm and in the spiritual realm. In the physical realm, when they enter the cave, they say, let us surround the cave with words of Torah, so that the idea of being surrounded is being protected and contained. That's why before we read about the spark, which is contained Ganiz Go Izka de Malka, it's within the ring of the king. There is a protection there, and here the Hesed embraces. It goes around the body in a way that completes the ring, completes the circle, and puts the love in a protected space. This is mighty waters will not be able to put out the fire of love, and everything is like that. Now here, that last statement, Kola ke'ai gavna, is a common statement in the Zohar. It's sort of something that apparently is meant to explain, but does not explain anything. Because what do you mean, V'chen kola ke'ai gavna? Everything could be understood in that manner. How, where, what? Give me details. It's known. The same way as when Rabbi Lazar presents a verse, he says, Ha'it arnabe, it is already known. To whom? I know the commentary. So that is part of the air of mysticism that we feel when we read the Zohar. Now we change gears in that story. Remember that the whole story takes place in a cave in Lod, around Lod, which we don't know that there were caves there, but we'll accept it. Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Abba were in the cave in Lod. They got in because it was hot, and they sit there. And when they come in, they say, let us surround or crown this cave with words of Torah. That I explained that the reason for that is to create that sacred space. So now they are in this contained space which is sacred in the study Torah, and they expound on this verse of the in Shir HaShirim. But as they were sitting there, Ad dehavo yatvei, sham'u kale de Rabbi Shimon, dehava ate beorcha, hu ve'Rabbi Yehuda ve'Rabbi Yitzhak. So they hear the voice of Rabbi Shimon walking, and he's walking with two other rabbis, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yitzhak. There is a Rabbi Yehuda was a contemporary of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, of the original Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, but Rabbi Yitzhak is not of that same timeline, and that's, as I mentioned before, prevalent problem in the Zohar, where the chronology of the names doesn't fit the Talmudic chronology as we know it. So now this is a new phase in the story where Rabbi Shimon joins his son and Rabbi Abba. So we'll take a break here, and we'll continue after the break with that part of the story.